Rachel, I'll come clean, was a funny child. By turns defiant, then sensitive, then defiant again. It didn't help that Claire and Margaret had formed a rock-solid alliance and wouldn't let Rachel play with them. Then something happened in 1974, a few months after Anna was born, which might have affected Rachel. My father died, and even though there's no such thing as depression, I will admit I went a bit odd. Claire and Margaret had each other, and my sister Kitty came to mind baby Anna because Mr. Walsh had to go to Manchester for a while for his job. And I suppose that between the jigs and the reels, Rachel didn't get all the attention she needed. But she made up for it later in life. In spades, as they say. Or do they? Are we allowed to say spades anymore? Sacred Mother of the Divine, all this PC stuff is a minefield. There I'd be, saying a word I'd been saying all my life, and suddenly everyone would be looking at me like I'd just murdered someone. Did you know you can't say Oriental anymore? All of a sudden, that's banned. It's Asian now. But Asia is huge. How can you know what part of Asia the person is from just by them saying, I'm Asian? Rachel spent a while living in Prague. Then she moved to New York. And somewhere along the line, didn't she get addicted to drugs? There was some sort of botched suicide attempt, and she ended up having to go to rehab. She'll tell you about it herself in Rachel's Holiday. Those were the days when no one went to rehab. Nowadays, of course, the dogs in the street check in every 5 minutes. In fact, you're more likely to be shunned if you haven't gone to rehab. But at the time, it was an awful shock, and I was very ashamed of her. So, like I said, in 1974, Anna, another girl, came along, and I just ran out of energy. I stopped trying to mould my children to be like me. Feck her, I thought, she can do what she likes. So she lived in her own little world. A sweet little thing, I'm not saying she wasn't, but very vague. Away with the fairies is the best way of putting it. Feet planted firmly in mid-air. Obsessed with tarot cards and fortune-tellers and mysticism and all that codology. And the clothes on her, long, streely, floaty, hippie things. One night she nearly burned the house down, tie-dyeing a coat in a big saucepan on the hob. Another night, her father's beloved golf trophies were nearly stolen because she'd come home out of her box and left her key in the front door for any passing burglar to open and pop in, which one Julie did. If it wasn't for the fact that Mr. Walsh got up early that morning, his trophies would have been pawned along with the telly and the microwave. But, and I'm holding up my index finger here like the wise old woman I am, I had Anna pegged all wrong. Anna did the biggest recovery curve of them all. For years she was bloody useless, never earned a penny, couldn't hold down a job to save her life. Then she moved to New York, and in a series of moves, she'll tell you herself and anybody out there, got the best job in the world, trademark, working as a publicist for a world-famous cosmetics house. Never give up on a person is what Anna's story tells me. In 1978, in a last-ditch attempt to get a boy for Mr. Walsh to play with, along comes Helen. And where do I start? When they made Helen, they broke the mould. And at least we can be grateful for that. There's only one of her in the world to handle. All I can say in her favour is that she has a good job. She's a private investigator. And sometimes, when she needs a hand, I help her out. My favourite is when she has to search a person's house. I love to have a good gawk around another person's house and paw through their stuff when they're not there. I would give every penny I own to be let loose in the Kilfeathers' house. They're our next-door neighbours. Lovely people. We are terrific pals, of course. And yet, I find that I very much hate Mrs. Kilfeather. I can't explain it any better. Mr. Walsh is called Jack, and I will tell you all about him under U, useful. He does the hoovering, and earns all the money. Not that I let him have any of his own, he'd only spend it. I'm in charge of that end of things. A is for alcohol. Neither myself nor Mr. Walsh is a big drinker. Naturally, I'd take a spritzer or two if I was out for it.